Well, about to watch some anime on the HTPC, and before I forget, because it's already many days later, there's King Arthur. Yeah, King, do you know the password to that? Huh, dude? If only I had made it an all number so I could use the remote. I used to actually have that back when I was less grumpy about using an all password number, all number password. What this is about is something I forgot about, the Superlight mice that I believe forgot to make it in the video. Some of you this may not matter to. Some of you may have cat fur on your phone camera lens, and that you would be like me. The Superlight has no ability on the mouse itself, even if programmed. Without losing buttons, you have no ability to change the DPI. And I forgot that was one of the big reasons why I didn't really go from the Pro to the Superlight. I didn't really use the Pro that much, but it was like a secondary mouse. It was kind of the kind of like, oh, you need to borrow a mouse, here you go, or oh, I need a mouse to take someplace. Well, this one's not in use. Take that, sort of thing. So maybe I'm the market of the Pro too, because I want a freaking DPI button. If you guys running, I don't use a whole swath of DPIs. Like they normally ship in 400, 800, 1600, 3200, or some of the more niche mice like the Lamzoos will come out at 400, 600, 800, 1200, 1600, think 1800, 2400 maybe, or 3200, something like that. Like where they come with closer steps, because realistically you should be 1600 or under. I can maybe see on the desktop up to 3200 or something. But yeah, it has no ability. That means when I use it for work, right, I have to change it because I don't use the LG G Hub, the Logitech G Hub software. So I have to open up the onboard memory manager, right click, set the DPI at, I can set the other tier. And then when I go back to game, I have to pop that back open and do it again. And then when I'm not gaming anymore, whereas if you guys are wondering, even in the menus of games, often I will use 1600 DPI because that's what I'm used to on the desktop. So we're clicking around the menus. But then when I'm actually aiming, I use 400. There's a lot of people that do that. And that's how I would use DPI nowadays. You really don't need a quote unquote sniper button like you'll see even some mice recently have. And the reason for that being that games do that themselves on their own now. Back when the DPI change button and the sniper button first started being a thing, games did not automatically correct. Like when you zoomed in, you didn't have a different scale factor for your sensitivity of your mouse than when it was, normal hip fire, basically, or or even like ADS versus hip fire. There weren't different ones there, and then nowadays you got ADS, hip fire, scoped in, different one when you're in a vehicle, different one when you're in it used to be, depending on the game you're playing, once you hop into a vehicle, you just have to switch to a different DPI. It might even be 6400 if you have it, because that was a pretty high DPI back then. And you could actually turn your turret around at a reasonable rate in your tank. So that's why that was there before. Now we have enough control about that where you can kind of stick with one, mostly one. It'd probably be fine with one, but I could see where some people could still use 2 DPIs if they wanted to. I just mainly use it in the menus because I use 1600 on my desktop. And originally back in the day, I was 400 with IntelliMouse Optical and Wheel Mouse Optical. I did have an IntelliMouse Explorer, not my favorite mouse though, but it was everywhere, just like those other 2 mice. And then there was I had the Logitech MX Revolution, 800 DPI only. I think it was the first laser mouse, if not one of the first laser mice. Loved that mouse till it was no longer viable, basically. as an ergonomic desktop mouse. So that's where I kind of got locked in on the um, 800. It was roughly 800. It was like 7 something, 796 or something like that. Um, but after that, used the G5. I want to say those did up to 1600. I might be wrong. Like like an MX518. Um, but at the time I had a G5, probably because I was used to the laser because of the MX Revolution. And I'm trying to think. I'm thinking it was the Death Adder next. And those had 1800 DPI. Just only in some cases original, I believe, only has that. I still do not have the original Death Adder. I have the 3.5G. And I'm missing I'm missing the original, and I'm missing the black edition of the 3G. Trying to remember which generation that was. Either that should be only what I'm missing, and that was always 1800, right? Around that same time, Zoe was doing weird things where you couldn't get 1200, you got 1150, and that's because they were taking sensors and modifying them to be better with different lenses, like they would track better and stuff like that. But then their DPIs would be all wonky because they would get adjusted due to the new sensor they put on. So that was pretty standard. But with 1800 on the Death Headers, again being used to that, that happened, and I would always kind of use it as my side one. So I just got used to that. And what I actually ended up getting used to was 1600 in the end, because that was the closest most mice had to the Death Adder. So I actually got used to 1600 more than 1800, but they're close. I shouldn't say they're close enough apart. A lot of times when I would use Death Adder, I'm at a LAN party because I don't want to undo. Or I say undo down. You guys are like, yeah, I'll pick up my mouse and I'll go to a LAN party. Right. So it was a wired mouse that was cabled into all your other stuff on the back of your computer, right? Not an inconsequential thing to do. Also, same thing with, you might be ripping one of the monitors out of your. If you want your best monitor at a LAN party, you'll pull one of that out. Now, I was the kind of guy that didn't do that. I always brought, and this is how a lot of other people were, is they don't want to undo their home setup because they have that, with that just clean, and you know, it is they'll bring just garbage otherwise, or like the old one, or the one they don't like as much. Like, say they bought a new gaming panel, and they do run 2 panels, but they use their old panel as the secondary, right? Well, they can unplug the secondary from the thing easily enough, so they take that with them, and then they want to like unhook the mouse and all that. So they'll take like whatever their old mouse was or whatever other mouse they have around. Well, I always had like in case I needed a wired mouse for my laptop to some gaming there, I had my Death Adder. I knew I'd be going to LAN parties, some of which they do provide systems, but they don't provide keyboards and mice. And for that, I had originally my SteelSeries 7G. Even that's a bit bulky with all the cables and wires that came out of it. So it ended up being, trying to remember here if that was a Philco or a Leopold. One of the two. I think Frozen, he had a Leopold for that. And then I might have had a Philco. I had a Leopold, but I don't think it was for that. I don't know, but we built. They actually made. I still own mine. for traveling with your headset, keyboard, mouse, and one other item I'm forgetting. Um, you could travel with all those. I did have to, both he and I, in order to fit our keyboards though, because those were 75% at the time. I had to make a insert that would allow us to put it in there, and it was like just some foam cut out and put on the thicker poster board, or it might have been I'm trying to remember, like the card stock maybe, because there's some of those get pretty thick on their levels, because like your poster board's still pretty flimsy. There's still another thing that you would like pick up and do, and kind of like there's the foam backed one. That one's kind of like foam poster board, but I don't know if that even existed back then. Either way, we put foam in, like traced the size of the keyboard, cut it out. They actually fit really well because we could make the foam fit the keyboard, and then put the back on it so that on all sides except one, it was, fitment was good. You'll see this idea executed much better in almost all of Keychron's keyboard pages. They have a generic casing that's probably like, this is the smallest size case for all of our keyboards, and then they fit insides that fit all our keyboards into that one case, so they can cover tons of keyboards with one case. And you can just lift pieces up and then put stuff underneath, or if there's room to put extra stuff there. So yeah, back then it was like a single strap over shoulder, highly gamer looking, of course, that we brought all that with, and that one there is where the Death Adder was for me. That's kind of how the new G Pro was for me for a bit. It was in that area where I kind of just be like, oh, like, or people when we're at here around here, they'd be like, oh, can I borrow a mouse? That would be the mouse. They get the mouse out of the bag, because like that bag's always sitting ready to go, and you're like, oh, don't you have your best stuff in there? It's like, no, I'm just going to have fun. I'm not going to I'm going to the LAN parties. I'm not going to like the esports convent or esports tournament and stuff like that. Usually, for some, but that oh, what I was getting to once we had gotten to the Death Adder. Okay, not even that whole Death Adder looking like, or the Pro non ultralight looking like the Death Adder, at least in the way I was using it. It was more that the Death Adder was the way it was used. And it was just 1800 DPI. So even though I use 1600 DPI every day, I just used 1800 DPI. I will say during that era, because I wasn't in that era, it was before this and then after this, I was playing more competitively. I didn't really care because I was still having fun. You know what I mean? Didn't really notice how I had a smaller mouse. I like went back to a smaller mouse pad because my at-home stuff was more it was more work oriented, or productivity oriented. I call it that. So I had smaller mouse pads, which were not enough. If they were not enough width, like say a 10 by 12 inch mouse pad, which would have been considered the larger sized back then. That was the larger size back then. Then imagine a like productivity one. Productivity one is like that big, like double that. Like it's just a little circle around your mouse. You know what I mean? Or a little square. Those might have been 6x4. I might be wrong, but that sounds about right. And you gotta remember 4x3 is a poster card, something card. Two of those stacked on top of each other. That was a not uncommon mouse pad for use in like offices, or you guys have probably seen them kicking around. So having that higher DPI when you use pads that small kind of made sense, you know. But I don't wish to go back to that. I guess what I was getting into, that Death Adder was a mouse I always came back to. I never mained it. It was never the main mouse on my desk, like actually never the main mouse on any of my desks that weren't temporarily set up. I did a few where, you know, if I needed to do an initial project, I would set up another desk, usually for video encoding, and then I'd pop the mouse on there, because that was the third extra mouse I would have. At least at the time. It would never be my main gaming mouse at home, but it would be always going to the conventions. But that one, the model I had, was 1800 DPI. So I don't want to go back to that. Because, we've actually gotten worse in DPI control. I touch on this on another video coming up. We did worse on DPI control. Basically, the G700S was the best control of that. Yes, it's a mouse with more buttons. Only one other one you'd be able to do it with now is probably like the G500, or sorry, the G500X Lightspeed. But just let me change my DPI. That's all I'm asking. Just do the old SteelSeries way, like on the Akari laser and the Xi, where you click it and there's a little light that goes beep boop and switches between the two. That is all I need to know. It's very rare to have to hand out mice to people who aren't you that are using it. Yeah, and if it is, just change it to a cycle of them. You know, in this case, like technically the modern Razer mice, they can have as many as they want. Or Vaxi, you can get, was it 5 or 6 DPIs, I think, and you just press the button, color changes. Now if you only put 2 in, there's only 2 to cycle through. Good enough for me. So let me know what you guys think on that. Do you think it's a huge deal breaker? I can make it work, but it does get annoying. The biggest one is if I go out, like, I'm sleepy now. That's why we're going to watch anime. If I go and came off gaming right now, left it at 400 DPI, I'm going to wake up, go try and work. Well, it's not tomorrow. It'd be, yeah, but say if this tomorrow was a day I had to work, I'd wake up, go try to use the computer, and be all, because it's only 400 DPI instead of 1600 that I'm used to. So let me know your comments down below. What do you think about? Nope, you did. What do you think about lack of DPI? or sorry, lack of a switch slash button for DPI changing. Do you think this, or do you think, you know, yeah, in this, I would consider this and the, like, yes, you can go change it in software, or yes, you could sacrifice one of your other buttons on the mouse to change the DPI. However, in regards to changing the other buttons, what the fuck? That means I'm gonna lose. Okay, I have a 5-button mouse that I use all the function of, which you all should. You should use all the 5 buttons, and they're, you know, like to scroll up, scroll down, click in, etc. So if I want a DPI change, I'd have to lose one of those. You know, I feel like it'd probably be where what I have bound to forward, but where would I then bind that and remember where to put it, sort of thing. Or we could just have a dedicated DPI button, like so many mice have had since before they were gaming mouse. You know, it's not that hard. You know, let me know if you actually use that button for anything, or you just use it to get to the DPI you use, and that you'd never need it again. Also, how many of you use features for mice that are not just, that can't be saved to the onboard memory? Like, how many of you use features on the mice that do that? I would be interested in that as well, because ever since I was kind of introduced, or not got introduced to Zoe, because that was back when they had their thing with Monoprice, because Monoprice would send them to me for review, because I was part of Monoprice's review program. But ever since I got, like, basically on the EC2, I have the EC2A. I don't even know if there's an older EC2 than the A. If there is, let me know, guys. I would like to pick one up, because I have the EC2A, B, and C. I'm trying to remember if is that a C, or I think it just went back to the EC2 again. Naming wise. And then there's an EC3 -C. Yeah, there's gotta be an EC2-C as well. Maybe they never did that. Interesting. If I wasn't so tired, I might go look, since they're all over there. Well, we'll see you in the next one. Let me know, comments, questions, everything down below. I am gonna get some rest.